Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome, everybody, to our listeners' podcast. We are now at episode 3. For today's episode, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Sanjay Rajasekar, who is the co-founder of SmartHub.ai. SmartHub.ai, for all of you who don't know, is at the forefront of AI-driven edge automation and intelligence for operation. In fact, SmartHub is an award-winning software company that specializes in AI ML powered edge automation, OT asset management, edge intelligence, and cybersecurity hygiene for operational teams. Now, a little bit about Sanjay before I ask him to introduce himself. Sanjay is an extremely busy person. In addition to founding SmartHub.ai, which is his second startup, he is also a board member and advisor to multiple companies like Eiling Systems and Engage Click. Prior to his entrepreneurial track, he was an executive at multiple organizations like Infosys, Symphony Telecom, and of course, Microsoft. Today, we are going to dive into the depth of why edge matters, why edge is important, how AI is working at the edge. But before we get into all those topics, Sanjay, welcome to our podcast. Would you like to introduce yourselves and to say a few words about your life, your journey, and what has caused you to open up and create SmartHub?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having me, Emmanuel. Truly an honor to be part of this. Looking forward to the dialogue and the conversations today. So that was a good introduction on the career side. One of the things that I thrive and that I always look forward to is bringing new things into the market and doing stuff which are fun, especially bringing new technologies and solving some of the big problems that customers have. So I think that brings me again and again to startup world or to try solving problems. So I'm more of a builder by nature.
Mm-hmm.
So for me,
Mm-hmm.
anything which has a challenge and is chaotic, I like getting into that and trying to figure my way out. That brings us to the journey of Smart Hub itself and how we came about. We are a spin-off from a company called VMware, which Broadcom acquired, and as you
Mm-hmm.
know, they're one of the hyperscalers. And while at VMware, there was a technology that was developed with a vision of
Mm-hmm.
solving the complexity in the IoT industry.
All right.
Because
Mm-hmm.
if you look at the way whether it's facilities or enterprises are growing, there's a lot of data being produced outside of the data center, and which are predominantly IoT driven, whether it's physical security, whether it is AV facilities, any of the vertical specific stuff. Companies have started bringing in a lot of point solutions, which are driven by IoT stuff, IoT devices, what we refer to as edge endpoints. And as you know, the footprint of that is becoming very big in
Mm-hmm.
enterprises. And managing that infrastructure from a security, from an automation, is something that we saw as a great opportunity. And VMware had this background of creating this whole virtualization, which led to the data center model that we see today.
Mm-hmm.
So we brought that more to the edge and took that platform, which was more in the R&D stage, and then spun off as a separate company. And we were in the stealth mode for all of 2021. And then within a short time, we started appealing to large enterprises which are struggling with tens of thousands of endpoints, edge endpoints. And then we started building not just more capabilities on managing that infrastructure, but
Mm-hmm.
also securing it, automating it. And for us, we were going after the data that comes out of it, because we have had companies, some of our customers, just in one department have something like 1.5 billion metrics
Wow.
flowing through our system. That's humongous. That gives us an unprecedented capability to analyze the data, understand what are the
Mm-hmm.
anomalies, what are the trends, what are the patterns, and we are able to give intelligence back to those companies that they never had on their operations. So it's been an
Wow.
interesting
Mm.
journey for us.
No, it's fantastic, Sanjay, and it's this amazing point where we are seeing an outburst of physical infrastructure. You have commercial real estate, you have multi-development units, you've got mixed realty units, you've got data centers that are sprouting out from everywhere, and with
Hmm.
the whole concept where everybody is talking about cloud connectivity, cloud hosting, and sharing your data on the cloud,
Hmm.
SmartHub has chosen to specialize on the edge.
Hmm.
Why is the edge important now, Sanjay? And what are the impacts of focusing on the edge?
Gotcha. So, if you look, the whole industry kind of swung to doing everything in a cloud environment. But as technology improved, and then you now have hardware form factors which are able to compute really fast, right? And people quickly realized that because of cost factor, because of latency, they couldn't take all the data to the cloud. It becomes expensive. There is a latency part as well, and
Mm-hmm.
now you have use cases popping up all over, which requires compute at the edge happening. More than compute, the actions, the ability to infer, run inferences, and so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth, right there at the edge with the data residing there rather than going to the cloud and coming back, becomes very important. As an example, safety of people
Mm-hmm.
in conference rooms, sorry, in facilities, or you have access controls, you have physical security breaches. You can't afford to send all of that data, analyze it, and then send back, even if it takes few seconds or so, because you're dependent on that, the data pipe, you're dependent on the
Mm-hmm.
cloud infrastructure, and again, expensive to run. So we see more and more instances where our customers say, hey, certain very low latency,
Mm-hmm.
especially AI ML workloads, where actions have to be taken right then and there in milliseconds, that's where um, there's a lot of opportunity in terms of edge compute and what we offer.
Right. A very interesting point, Sanjay. And I think the comment that you made with respect to infrastructure in today's world, with the evolution of physical space and the coming in of data centers, all of a
Hmm.
sudden we are having to deal with large amounts of critical infrastructure.
Hmm.
And with critical infrastructure coming in, all that happens at the edge. It may power the cloud, and you may have those services running on the cloud, but what is powering those cloud services are the critical equipment that sit and reside within a facility, within a data center, or
Correct.
within a building. So with Smart Hub coming in and focusing on the edge management and edge automation of it, how critical is edge management of critical infrastructure? And how is Smart Hub ensuring that this edge infrastructure will always be protected, safe, and secure?
Gotcha. So there are multiple ways. One is we need to look at the uptime, downtime of this edge infrastructure, right? Ability to understand what is happening at the operations,
Mm-hmm.
ability to understand which devices are going down, which systems are going down, what
Mm-hmm.
is happening with them, gives
Right.
us the ability to solve those problems even before it happens. We've always talked about predictive maintenance in the industry, but now it's a reality. That is something
Mm-hmm.
that we can quickly do. In terms of security and all that, see, we can go down, our technology is able to go down to each and every device level, each and every asset, each and every edge endpoint. We are able to see things like, did configuration change, did properties change, was there an intrusion? All these are important.
Mm-hmm.
Facility is interesting, things like password rotation or certificate management. People neglect it. They don't
Mm-hmm.
focus as much as the IT infrastructure, but very critical data passes through this infrastructure as well. So we look at multi-layered zero security. We look at how we can actually detect anomalies, detect intrusion,
Mm-hmm.
configuration changes. So there are multiple layers
Mm-hmm.
in which security can be rolled out, because the operations, the facilities operations especially, has been ignored from an IT infosec policy. And you know this better as well from your past background. How do you enforce that, right? At the same level as how you enforce it on an IT asset like your desktop, your laptop, and so on. And we bring that kind of rigor for asset performance, asset uptime, downtime for the operational assets.
So let's take this example of your Sanjay. With the coming in of cloud, what has
Mhm.
happened is people are connected all the time. People are connected everywhere. What
Mhm.
that has also led to is it has created a situation where people now own more than a single device. In fact, I would say the proliferation of devices within
Mhm.
space and personal use has gone
Mhm.
up exponentially as well. Yeah, we
Correct.
should talk about a PC, a phone. Now we talk about phone A, phone B, phone Y, and phone Z.
Correct.
Now
Correct.
the same thing is happening inside the spaces that we work. For
Mhm.
example, buildings are, as we've spoken before, have got multiple devices in them that collect data, be it for
Correct.
occupancy, be it for indoor air quality, be it for noise, sound. And this applies to our data center environments as well, where the combination of keeping the ambient environment is critical for
Correct.
ensuring these servers operate correctly. Now, with
Correct.
that, the concentration of devices in physical space has gone up, which typically means an open attack vector for any of the folks trying to hack into these systems. Now, with
Mhm.
someone like SmartHub coming in, you very nicely spoke about device management. Would you
Mhm.
be able to share with us why device management is important now and
Mhm.
how SmartHub is going to ensure that your perpetrators will be less able to attack these systems and you'll be
Mhm.
able to understand the life cycle of these devices?
Yeah, sure. See, the security comes in different forms when we look at these endpoints. It is
Mm-hmm,
as simple as starting off when we look at life cycle management for our customers.
mm-hmm,
We start off with visibility. Most of the customers don't even have visibility into what sort of devices are hanging off their network.
mm-hmm,
It would be connected. They would have issued an IP config, IP address, and then over a period of time, they forget what it is doing, where it is. It gets legs on its own and goes in different parts of the
mm-hmm,
facilities, right? So we start off with doing a sort of a discovery and providing the visibility on all the assets within the company, OT assets, especially because we focus more on the OT side. The Once we have that, then we have an understanding of which ones are secure, which ones are patched. We have
mm-hmm.
discovered that some of them have aren't touched since the last 8 years, 10 years. So all the innovation that OEMs bring for their devices and their systems is never applied to those systems. So it opens up a lot of backdoor stuff. It opens up a lot of vulnerabilities that happen to these devices. We look at
Hmm.
that vector as well. Interestingly, these sort of devices in an enterprise, in our customer base, we have seen roughly 4 times to 5 times more than IT assets, which is alarming and surprising in a way because people are using these sort of technologies, but they're not looking at it from a security standpoint, which we highlight to the companies. We ensure that the IT companies also are able to push IT infosec policies to these devices and so on and so forth. Things like when should the password be rotated, when should the certificates be updated, and things like that. So there are different levels at the most granular level. um, there are some things that happen to the devices as well, because of the footprint of device and how many properties each of the devices have. It is becoming humanly impossible to see whether something's got
Mm-hmm.
changed, configuration got changed. Like for example, you will have a security surveillance camera which will be sending a feed to you, so you'll be happy that it's sending a feed to your NVRs and you'll be visually seeing that feed. But someone can insert that and send it to another address as well. You will not know that the configuration has happened. You will not know that hacks like these happen. So we again look at multiple layers. And I think it's important for the customers to start off with visibility, start off with managing these in a holistic way, patching them, updating them, and then also monitoring. through machine learning and real-time analysis on whether intrusion happened, configuration, whether configuration drift happened, and so on and so forth. And role-based, today, things like role-based access doesn't exist in a
Hmm.
lot of cities, right? You will have even a technician sometimes will come in to repair some stuff in the facilities, and people will give them access, and then they repair it, and then they go away. Nobody shuts it down. Nobody knows to rotate that access and things like that. So all those operational aspects. So there is process, then there is the
Hmm.
people adhering to infosec, and then there is a platform itself which provides a lot of capabilities from a security standpoint. So all this has to be holistically looked at from a facilities perspective. So you need a lot of technology which allows you to do this at the enterprise scale.
Hmm. Those are the interesting points. If we look at Moore's law today, it is
Hmm.
still relevant today as it was in the past. And what we are basically hearing from you is devices are on a growth curve, especially at the
Mhm.
edge of the buildings. And in fact,
Correct.
from what you are saying, we have more devices, OT devices, operational technology devices, compared to IT devices in a landscape. And we lose
Correct.
track of this. Now, in that situation, Sanjay, if we have to have a situation where we have a landscape where we have devices from multiple vendors,
Mhm.
at the end of the day, everyone is focused on a cost prerogative, and we would like to choose the best options possible for the best value. So we
Mhm.
decide to go with a heterogeneous landscape where we have
Mhm.
devices from multiple vendors, all having different forms, function, and purposes, collaborating together on an integrated data layer, so we're able to drive value from it.
Mhm.
In this particular context, I am managing different class of devices. I'm managing different class of suppliers. I'm going to
Mhm.
manage different update schedules. I'm going to track different amounts of telemetry going through. How would someone like a SmartHub help in this context where I have such a diverse and heterogeneous landscape? Now, piggybacking off your previous point, I
Mhm.
also have to have device updates coming in from these suppliers. So, how does
Mhm.
SmartHub help this? How are you going to make these environments more secure, managing all these components coming together?
Yeah, good question. See, unfortunately, the industry today is still siloed. People look at
Mm-hmm.
solving, OEMs look at solving their problems, and most of these systems are not open systems. They don't even have APIs for you to be able to talk to them and
Mm-hmm.
interact with them. On one side, you have a industry which has evolved very siloed applications, siloed infrastructure, different
Mm-hmm.
protocols. It is fragmented. That's a reality. And then the data is stuck in those silos as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you need a system of systems which is open, which is able to crack open these silos and enable you to talk to those infrastructure, talk to those devices, automate stuff. Automate stuff here means things like healing those devices or remote diagnostics, or to understand how is that asset performing. That level of granularity interaction has to happen. Um, and that's where we come into play, a platform like ours, which where the reality is that the every large enterprise has heterogeneous environment, which
Mm-hmm.
means they have different siloed systems for their operations. How do you have a system of system which is able to give you a single control plane, a single pane of
Mm-hmm.
visibility, to monitor it, to monitor the operations, to secure those operations, and to manage the whole lifecycle management? You talked about updating these devices and things like that. So things like you need to have capabilities for workflow. How are you going to update? Can you update a set of these devices in different geos? Can you
Mm-hmm.
what happens if some of them don't get updated? Can you roll back? Can you have enough security layers for it to go through approval process, right? All that kind of stuff that existed in the IT world, we bring it to the OT world. And in such a complex environment,
Mm-hmm.
our whole principle and philosophy has been how do we crack open these silos and get access to that infrastructure, get access to this data, so that the companies can build compelling connected user experiences and do a lot of analysis. Every company
Mhm.
wants to do some sort of AI and analytics, and they're looking at operations. How are you going to do it if it's in silos, if you can't access that, right?
Mhm.
And that's where we come into picture. The user experience is something that you talked about ambient AI as ambient intelligence, right?
Mhm.
That is something where a lot of companies are looking at. Hey, as a person transverses through the facilities, right, from coming into the parking lot to navigating to the offices, using the infrastructure, using the locker rooms, using kiosks, canteens. As the user flows through the facilities, how do you provide very customized, context-aware experiences to them, um, right? And they're spending their energy on that. The only way you can do it is if you have real-time access to the data about that person and to the systems that they are using. Are you able to stitch together some sort of a connected experience which follows them, right? We talk about resilient buildings, we talk about context aware buildings. You're not able to do that if you're not able to talk to the infrastructure or the data, underlying data. And that is where we come into picture, where now we open the possibilities of connected experiences in facilities and so on.
Sanjay, one comment that you mentioned, you spoke about self-healing devices. We
Mm,
have been exploring the concept of buildings alive. We've been exploring the
mm,
concept of self-healing buildings, where the
mm,
core infrastructure in a building is able to adapt and learn based on user
mhm,
demands and needs. And
mm,
if something is wrong with the infrastructure, if it is not tuned properly, if its set points need to change, or if it needs
mm,
to be updated, the infrastructure is able to make those decisions,
mm,
thereby ensuring the occupant always has the best possible experience. Now,
mm,
you have brought in the concept of self healing
mhm,
devices. Is
mhm,
it possible for the OT devices, for sensors, for data
mm.
gatherers, also to mimic the life of critical infrastructure in a building? And how would they self heal, Sanjay? How is that going to happen?
So the self-healing, I'll give you two use cases just to make it easier for us to understand. So let's say you have, and we have seen this in some of the customers as well. Let's say, without taking names of OEM, let's say you have a device running in your conference rooms, right? Let's say a speakerphone or a video camera or something like that. It can have memory leaks over a period of time, or it might get too hot temperature-wise and things like that. So you need a system which is able to monitor the health of that asset.
Mhm.
In this case, the problem that we solved was, as the memory leak happened more and more, it used to clog the CPU, and then finally the device used to have crawling speeds and if not operate.
Right.
So a technician had to physically go and reboot.
Hmm.
It's a very simple thing, just a reboot, which released everything and then it started performing again. Why do you have to send a human being to do that? If you have
Right.
systems which are monitoring the health, you can have logic in there to say, hey, is the device being used? Is it safe to reboot now? Or is it safe to take an action, remediation action, which can bring it back to healing? We reboot our computers
Fantastic.
all the time, right?
Right.
Same
Right.
thing happens to the OT device as well. People will say, oh, OT is rebooting and self-healing. It is one of the self-healing. It has been
Mhm.
proven that, right? You can also have workflows which trigger to say, hey, raise a request in a CRM that this device has gone down, or raise an alert, raise a notification. Any action that you can take that results in that device going back to its optimal state of performance is autonomous healing in a way,
Oh,
right? And that,
fantastic.
yeah, that we bring that to all of these devices.
Just
People talk
extending
of,
your thought there, Sanjay, on the last motion you mentioned, where
mm,
the device reboots itself, the recent outage that occurred, the CrowdStrike outage that occurred, and
mhm,
when we were hearing about why it took so long to bring these machines back online, and they actually said
mm,
what you said, a human has to physically go in there and reboot that machine. And given the
Correct.
amount of machines they have, no matter what you do, it is going to take that amount of time. Now, what you are
Correct.
saying is, why should a human go and reboot the machine? If the machine needs to reboot itself, okay, it should
Correct.
go ahead and do it with little or no human intervention at all. And that is what SmartHub is making possible. So they would
Correct.
have, so if we had a platform like a SmartHub at that point in time, the
Mhm.
whole dependency on a human to physically go and reboot every machine could have been avoided. Right? And that
Yeah.
is the self-healing property you're talking about.
Correct. See, it happens in the
Excellent.
conference room. So, great
Hmm.
example for facilities, right? All of us have gone through where we go into a conference room, start the meeting, and discover that some things are unplugged, some things are not
Right.
working, and things like
Yep.
that.
Hmm.
And then you call in a technician, and the technician comes and troubleshoots while all of you are waiting for a meeting. 10 minutes, 15
Hmm.
minutes is gone. And then if they are able to troubleshoot, great. If not, you go to a second conference room, right? And this is a reality. Now we run this automate. Now when you're looking at 1,500, 2,000 conference rooms that a large company has worldwide, we are
Hmm.
able to bring up that whole room through Zoom rooms or Microsoft Team rooms, run automated testing to see
Hmm.
which of the peripherals are working or not working, right? Now you get a report within a matter of few minutes to say this conference room in this part of the world is not working. Send a technician only there to fix it. Instead of physically reacting after a problem happens, now you're actually moving to a proactive
Hmm.
diagnosis and resolution. That saves huge amount of cost. And halfway
Right.
across the world, your knock or a SOC or any control room can run this and then say, hey, your infrastructure is down. And it becomes more and
Hmm.
more critical if you are in retail, if you're in manufacturing, because facilities come into picture there too. And any place where there is compliance, where the cost of bringing the operation down is expensive, meaning the downtime is expensive. Now we are looking at huge amount of savings by running these sort of automated diagnostic and self-healing.
Well, it is just amazing, isn't it, Sanjay? The simplicity in the use case and the impacts it has. And given
Correct.
that we have gone through these actual scenarios where these outages have occurred and we could have minimized the downtime. I mean, it
Correct.
becomes even more appealing to understand the criticality of the OT devices that are there within these landscapes and how important they are. So, Sanjay, with that, we have delved into why edge is important. We've spoken about
Mm-hmm.
security at the edge. We've spoken about self-healing devices.
Mm.
As a founder, as a person who's been doing this for a while, opening up these
Mm.
startups, what do you envision the challenges that are going to come onto the edge side?
Mm.
How is edge going to coexist with the cloud? Is the edge going to get more important? Because I want to talk about a little bit about Nvidia's announcement, which was
Mm-hmm.
reflecting on your earlier comment. They want to give the power of the edge and they want to give the power of AI inferences to
Mm.
everybody. Go and buy a PC, get it to your house, and you'll be able to do it. You don't need to depend on a large scale data center that's going to do it. You can run your
Mm.
own little AI program at home. So that
Mm.
means the edge is getting more and more important because you are powering users like us, basically, to
Mm.
do these AI models by ourselves rather than depending upon heavy compute infrastructure. So, with that in mind and all the advancements that are taking place, how do you envision the future for edge? And what are you, and from your perspective, what are the key challenges going to be?
Yeah, I think the ability to find the use cases which could be solved at the edge, that is something that people will figure out. It'll take some time. The hybrid model is here to stay. I would at least in I don't think it is going to be all 100% edge versus cloud and things like that. Now we are seeing some sort of a pendulum swinging to a more balanced approach where it's like, hey, I have this humongous amount of data which
Mm-hmm.
I'll take to the cloud, run ML, learn models, learn patterns, and things like that, and then push those learned models back to the edge so that it can respond. You will always have the problem of how much compute is required at the edge, right? That
Mm-hmm.
NVIDIA's
Mm-hmm.
announcement was fantastic. We are going to have form factors which are bringing more of that compute power to the edge. But still, I think the need for the cloud will exist. but the use case and what you do between the edge and the cloud will shift, right? We see this in all the time in autonomous cars. They are becoming more intelligent. You can't afford to go to the cloud for responses on autonomous
Very
driving
nice.
or object detection and things like that. All those things are coming to the edge. Security incidents will come to the edge.
Hmm.
Safety with respect to people will come to the edge. Access controls will come to the edge for facilities. And then simple things like your compliance stuff as well. Because we notice compliance departments also now are saying, look, I have these edge endpoints deployed in various places and it's continuously monitoring. uh, Compliance typically has been static. You
Hmm.
measure, you audit at a point in time, and then you say, is this building compliant? Is this use case compliant? But now you can do continuous compliance because you're getting telemetry all the time, and it will tell
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
every time you deviate. So things like the compliance, the responses, the alerts, all of that will reside in Edge as well. So I don't see any challenges per se as long as the hardware innovation happens. And we all know machine learning, AI models, all of those things are. This is a very unprecedented,
Hmm.
interesting times that we see. It's going to solve a lot of use cases. The question more about is how can I carve out use cases which are useful in certain categories, and that people will experiment and eventually they'll arrive at um, to say here is where AI,
Hmm.
ML, edge computing is going to help me.
Perfect. This is fantastic, Sanjay. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for sharing your insights and taking us to the world of
No
Edge and
worries.
how Edge is going to evolve. We are truly delighted to have you. Uh, with that, ladies and gentlemen, this is all the time we have for today's podcast. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you, Sanjay, for all your insights.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Take care, Anna.